Today on Locked On Red Wings, Detroit looks totally uninspired as they are shut out for the first time of this season.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And the Red Wings lost again. Shut out 2-0 by the Florida Panthers, and just an absolutely uninspired performance by the hockey team. And uninspired performance by Bally as well, as for the second time in, a week? The Red Wings have been on an outage. I believe it affected a Pistons game the other night as well. I know it's like the third consecutive day that the Bally app has had an outage since they've re-upped their and changed their UI. They changed their UI and the whole app decided to break. So I have had a very, very long day. I just wanted to come home and watch some Red Wings, which that didn't work out so well. But at the time, I didn't know that. And again, the Bally Sports app didn't work. So I just wanted to lead off with that I am very unhappy with the fact that I'm paying almost $200 for a service that I cannot provide, that it is 2023, and I have to go surfing the webs for a, let's call it, third-party site to watch our Red Wings game in 2023, despite the fact that I pay for a service. So there's my mini tirade. We can get past
No, I mean, it's wild, man. Obviously, this is Locked On Red Wings, so we'll talk about the Wings here. But yeah, heck of a start to the evening with that. That's 2 Red Wings games in a row and a Pistons game thrown in there as well. Yeah, man, it's it's a fine line because like the people, like the on-air personalities at Bally, I think are fantastic. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of a lot of people over there, but
this has to do with Bally, the network,
right? They're not a
regional
reflection of like they're not the fantastic on-air personalities that this city is blessed with on Bally is not associated with the streaming service aspect side of it, and so yeah, it's a frustrating thing that's been happening for this entire week now. So.
Yeah, absolutely not a slight against the regional Bally Sports Detroit network.
Yeah, of course.
The Bally network as a whole, how they run the app.
Well, we could go on a whole half hour about their future.
Yeah. So anyways, but you know what? Maybe it was a blessing in disguise because, man, I can't find a happy middle ground with this bright. That's too bright.
That's too bright.
That's too dark, I feel. But whatever.
I also think that's too dark. It's better than the other one.
There's like no middle ground. It's one of the two. And this is on right now. Anyways, it might have been a blessing in disguise, Scotty, for me.
Yeah, I kind of wish I couldn't watch this guy. I kind of wish I was just unable to watch, period. I mean, goodness, man. Not, as you said in the open, not very inspiring hockey. I think all these guys give 110% effort every time they're out there. They're pros and whatnot. But when you look and it's like 10 minutes left in the hockey game and you don't have 20 shots on net yet, that's kind of a staggering statistic.
Yeah. No, this is just another example. And it was really funny as Derek Lalonde before the game, he, obviously did his after practice media availability. And he said, like, yeah, he's something, I'm paraphrasing here. And Carly Johnston tweeted it, as well as I think Max Boltman, that he said something along the lines of like, yeah, it's great that we got off to a great start, but, our underlying numbers aren't good or something like that. Something similar to what he said last year after the game against the Boston Bruins early on in the season. So I was happy to hear that. I was like, okay, this team clearly sees that the same things we're seeing on what they need to improve on. And I thought this would be a good sign that they'll address it. And then they come out again, and yet again, they just play a flat first period, one of the flattest first periods I've seen in a while. And you know what? With the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders, we sat here and we said, like, okay, these are some of the best defensive teams in the league, so it kind of makes sense they wouldn't get a lot of shots off. The same thing happened to the Florida Panthers, and the Florida Panthers, again, don't allow a lot of shot attempts. I talked about why their Corsi for percentage is ranked so highly in yesterday's episode, not realizing at the time that it was mostly because their shot attempts are so low. They have one of the lowest shot attempt rates in the NHL right now against rates in the NHL right now. So that's kind of really bolstering the percentage in their favor. And you could see it in this game. The Red Wings could not cross the blue line. I saw so many attempts to break into the neutral zone, just pinched off by two guys in the blue line every single time.
That was the entire game, dude.
Yeah.
Again, like they had 16 shots on net halfway through the third period or something ridiculous. I might be a couple of shots off there, but like that was the entire game. Zone entry was non-existent, and when there was zone entry, it was snuffed. Like whatever the defensive game plan for the Panthers was fantastic because they completely snuffed out and nullified every single opportunity the Wings had pretty much the entire hockey game.
Yeah, it really was. And the Red Wings, and it's reflected on that. You know what? Here's the perfect opportunity. I haven't thrown this up here in a while. The heat map that people used to love so much. As I try and get this pulled up for you guys real quick. Here we go. And you can see it here, just the sheer lack of shot attempts that the Red Wings had at 5-on-5. This measures the Corsi. And I mean, you can see there's a couple of shots off to the left and the right of the net. It's like maybe two plus shot attempts at 5v5. Everything else is a light green, which indicates it was like one shot attempt. And it's nowhere near the middle or high slot. It's all along the blue line and then a few in the low slot. Compare that to the Florida Panthers with that dark blue spot. And I understand, in most games, because that's where the highest quality of scoring chances have, that's where players are going to drive the puck. You're going to get a lot of Corsi against inside the slot, but that should be a two-way street. Both teams should be seeing a darker spot inside that lower slot. Yeah. It's only the Panthers because the Red Wings could not break through the Florida Panthers defense. Like I said, they just kept getting pinched off at the blue line. And Prashant Iyer brought up a fantastic point on Twitter that he was really like, he's onto something. And I've noticed it too, that this Detroit Red Wings team, even more so than last year, tries and gets most of its scoring attempts off of the rush. Very, very little, very rarely, I should say, do they successfully enter the zone and set up and create offense that way? Very rarely, which is crazy because their head coach, Derek Lalonde, preaches 5v5 hockey and puck possession. And yet we haven't seen that. He preaches 5v5 hockey and defense and puck possession. Yet when you think about the three biggest question marks on this team, it is defense, puck possession, and 5v5 hockey. Like those three things are some of the biggest issues going on this season. Early on in the year, they found a lot of success because of the power play and a really high shooting percentage. They had a lot of offense going on, but now that's come back down. And all we're left with, hold on. Oh, I got to dial back. I was about to say something very inflammatory because, again, they still have a winning record. They just have not played very good hockey of late. But what I'm saying is true. And it does lead me to wonder at a certain point with the added depth on this forward core, we were expecting this team to score a lot more 5-on-5 goals consistently. Yes, they're one of the better teams in the league, technically by the numbers at 5v5 goals scored, but that was because their shooting percentage was insanely high. They were scoring a lot off the rush. These last 5 games since that 5-game winning streak, it feels like they really have not generated a lot of offense, especially from anyone outside the top line. Joe Veleno is like the only guy who is providing us depth scoring up until the game against the Islanders where they score back to back to back for some quick offense. So it really makes me, and it's only year 2, so I'm not ready to put him on the hot seat yet, but you begin to wonder, like, is the issue talent-wise? Because on paper, this team is better, and we talked about how many more goals they should be scoring this year, or is it a system problem? Is the system Derek Lalonde is running not clicking? I'm not saying it won't click, but is it just not clicking yet? And how long do we give it before we start to worry?
Yeah, let's go to break. I have some I have some things to rebuttal, not rebuttal, but just like my thoughts on what you brought up there.
Pull me back to reality. Very frustrating game to watch.
Maybe.
I'm a little heated up about it.
I feel like our entire dynamic is you getting really high with the highs and really low with the lows, and me just like kind of staying somewhat toward the middle and being like, well, I disagree.
That's very true. It is very accurate of how our dynamic works. So when we come back, Scotty is going to basically tell me that I'm overreacting, which he's probably right.
Not really, honestly, but
I mean, there's very rarely when you're like, calm down, Brian, where I'm like, yeah, you're right.
right,
So,
yeah.
Anyways, when we come back. As a business owner, you realize there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on vendor payments, payroll, or rent. For more than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped business secure working capital. From $5,000 to $1.5 million, Parkview Advance can approve your working capital in as little as 24 hours. It's a much easier process than you might imagine. We invite the many entrepreneurs that are Locked On NHL fans to learn more by calling them at 203-675-0071 or go to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance, helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com. Also got to talk to you guys today about Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same with your business team? If you're building a roster to win in the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites working for candidates with the right skills when you can do that with Indeed. Find the top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring right now. Again, that is Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed you do.
You should have said that before the graphic. Segment 2, almost said segment 3. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, I said a lot of things just there. A lot of it came from emotion, frustration regarding how this team has played. Slow starts, poor 5-on-5 play, poor possession game, defense really not doing a whole lot. And so I asked the question, like, are these struggles even throughout the win streak, even throughout this now, I won't call it a losing streak because they won an overtime game in the mix there, but this 5-game stretch of lackluster hockey. Mm-hmm. I asked the question, is it talent or system? And you were yourself.
I think it's a fine line because like I everything you're saying is true, right? Like no one should rebuttal you and say this team is really good at 5-on-5. You're wrong. Like that person like isn't out there, right? Like they objectively have not been good in that area really all season, but especially now it's being highlighted like during this time. So like that's not something to rebuttal, and that's not something I disagree with. You're 100% right. I think when looking and you start talking like bigger picture though, and you start talking like, is this system like we're into season number 2 now, like, is this system just not going to work? Only time will tell is like still where I'm at. Like this is what we're 11 games into the season.
Yeah. And to be fair, they added a ton of new players to that system.
Right. And that was going to be my point is like, this is a team that signed 11 free agents and traded for a new player. They have
two
like
new players.
Right. Yeah, correct. They have, I mean, just based on those acquisitions this offseason alone, that's 13 new like faces in this locker room. Like, and not that Lalone just gets like the longest leash ever or anything like that. But it's one of those things where I feel like it's still like this season just way too early to jump to that. I also think that, and this is really my main point, I refuse to believe that if it stays this unproductive in lines 2 through 4, that Lalone isn't going to change stuff up. I refuse to believe that. And so I think that that's an important thing to remember too, is like, yeah, we talk about like the second line has been like a huge talking point between the fan base and this show, obviously, because of its lack of offensive production. I cannot fathom that half of your top six isn't able to produce any goals ever, and you're just going to be like, well, it's February, it's March, and we're just like going to still see if this works eventually. Like I think Newsy is too results based for that as well. So I think that yes, it is frustrating, and yes, everything you said is correct. The 5-on-5 play has not been good. It is arguably, maybe even inarguably, this team's biggest issue right now. But I think like calling the system in question, or like calling the talent level of this roster in question, I do think it's too early for that, because we have to see different line combinations. I refuse to believe that we're just going to be stagnant with this. And if March comes around and we've seen 8 different combinations on the second line and the third line, and no one can score, and it just doesn't matter who plays with who, then maybe that's like a time to revisit this conversation. But on November 2nd, when we've really only seen 2 iterations of line 2 and really 1 iteration of line 3, I think it's probably a little too early still.
Well, and that's part of the frustration, though, too, is like outside of Robbie Fabry,
let's start seeing those changes. I agree with you, right? Let's start shuffling things up, because clearly some of this ain't working. I agree with that too.
I mean, outside of Robbie Fabry, this is a healthy hockey team. So there's not even like the injury bug excuse that you can say in years past as to why this team's not clicking. Like, and again, it is really early yet, and it's way too early to be like, is it the system? But it's just like, you notice like everything that Derek Lalonde says that he values is the things that the team hasn't been performing well on. And I'm not trying to blame him yet, but it makes you think,
Sure.
That YouTube meme or whatever. Anyways, I'm going to end that there before I dig my hole any deeper on that. The other problem too with this game is, for a long time during that 5-game winning streak, the Red Wings were carried by their power play, right? Well, 0 for 5 in this game. And that second period, it's crazy looking at the natural stat trick Corsi like bar line graph, where it goes up and down depending on who has more Corsi shot attempts, and because it'll color in when there's a power play, because the graph's at 5v5, the power play obviously is not 5v5, so it shows you when that metric's not going to move. And the second period is just red line, black line, red line, black line, interchanging between power plays for both teams. Red Wings had a lot of chances in this game. Like, they had opportunities to tie this game up, take the lead even, and they couldn't convert on the power play. And I think a large part of that is because teams have figured out what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And that is pass to Dylan Larkin in the bumper, or pass to the DeBrincat on the half wall. So they make a concerted effort to cover those guys in those spots. So when they do get the puck, it's either just pass the puck off and try to get open again, or shoot through traffic. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked the last few games, really, outside, I think, 1 power play goal that the Red Wings may have scored. And even this is the league's, we talked about it, was the league's worst penalty kill. One of those power plays, the Panthers were producing more pressure and more shots than the Wings were.
Yeah.
So it's like, for a large part of it, even though the power play is still generating some really good passes and still controlling a lot in the offensive zone at times, they're just not really getting the looks. So, I mean, this is the time it takes to adjust. Bright side, their penalty kill was 5 for 5. The penalty kill continues to be pretty strong, preventing goals from the other team. So that at least was something of note on the positive side.
For sure. The power play this game was a massive disappointment. Like we talked, it was one of the biggest things we talked about going in to this game in terms of like what the Wings needed to do to win. It was a massive, massive, massive disappointment. And the so far this season, because of just like the lack of production outside of it. Do you remember when the Wings, at one point, it was, I believe the line was Larkin, Mantha, Bertuzzi. And it was like, if you shut down that line, the Red Wings weren't scoring a goal that night.
Feels the same right now.
Right. And like, that's my point, is like, that's what, like some of these, and like, this is the first like true shutout of the season. It's not, I hope it's not going to be that dramatic like it was back then, but like, that's just like the vibe that tonight had. Like they, and I also think at 5-on-5 people are realizing your strategy, which is kind of alarming because it wasn't even really like blowing other teams out of the water and working really well beforehand. So like the fact that some people are already catching up, but like we talk so much about like the super aggressive forecheck and like the ways to combat that and whatnot. And I think again, I think the game plan the Panthers had in this game was stellar. They matched up against the Red Wings in phenomenal fashion. They snuffed out every single thing the Wings were trying to do. We never had any momentum, literally at any point. I think when it comes to the power play, like you brought up, yes, but I think also just that even strength. I think that this was a game where they just really, the Panthers just had your number.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked, excuse me, we talked yesterday too that was, that this team's strength was our opponent's weakness and vice versa. This was a really strong Corsi team. A Corsi team. I say that like that's a thing. I mean, it is a thing, but what I mean to say is like this is a very strong 5-on-5 possession team. They're very good at suppressing shots and shot attempts against and while producing their own. Well, the Red Wings aren't good at that at 5-on-5. Meanwhile, the Red Wings supposedly have a very good power play, and they had a very bad penalty kill. Well, the Panthers shored up their penalty kill, figured out the Red Wings power play, and just played their game at 5-on-5, and the Red Wings couldn't do anything about it. Very frustrating game. But we got to get to another break. When we come back, I got a couple more things I want to say, because you mentioned the top line, and I think you brought up a really good point. And you know what? To be fair, there are a couple other things that I did like. A couple of players.
There is some positives. Yeah,
there are a couple positives. But first,
we didn't lose 9-0. Like like there was some good in this game. But
so we'll finish up the conversation, then talk a little bit about the Bruins game on Saturday in segment 3. So stay tuned.
I'm going to talk to you guys today about BetterHelp. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and give you the tools to manage everything you have going on. I've benefited from therapy a lot. I've been going to therapy for every week or every 2 weeks for probably like 4 or 5 years now. I end, if you listen to Locked On Tigers, I end every single Tiger show with going to therapy is dope. I'm a very big advocate for it. And I think that it's a really positive learning experience where you learn about yourself. You have positive coping skills that you can come out of it with, and you learn to set boundaries, empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to fit your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. And the coolest feature that I talk about all the time is that you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge, which I cannot express how awesome of a thing that is that BetterHelp gives you. So find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/NHL today and get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNHL.
Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Just want to give Scotty a quick hand. He did that ad read.
So funny. Like I do like 3 ad reads a day, but like I never do them on here. It's just funny.
You killed it, honestly. Way better than any ad read I've ever done. I'm not even gonna lie.
Well, I don't know about that. It's just therapy. I go to therapy every week, so it's just easy for me to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's much appreciated, Scotty. Anyways, Red Wings again lose 2-0 to the Florida Panthers. Shutout for the first time. You mentioned the top line. This is like one of those things where it's great for the top line, but bad for everyone else. Yeah. The top line continues to be like the only line on this team that can actually generate any consistent offense. In fact, DeBrincat and Larkin and Reimer were like the only 3 players on this team that had a positive Corsi for percentage in a game where they got outshot pretty badly in the end. And not pretty badly. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, 27-22. But yeah, I mean, they're the only 3 players that can break into the offensive zone and then keep that puck in the offensive zone. They might not necessarily have the most well-established cycle, but they're fighting for the puck. They can get the puck, and then they can at least get a scoring shot attempt off once or twice before that puck leaves the zone. They're the only line that can actually do that on a consistent basis. The other lines, I think, struggle still. I think struggle. I've went on a tirade in the first segment explaining that they're struggling still. But the top line, I like to see that out of them. At least our top line is legitimately a threat every time they're out there, even if DeBrincat cost us an empty net goal because he decided to do a blind no-look pass to the middle of the offensive zone to the other team.
That was pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That was pretty wild. But it is nice, like I compared the top line of the past that's not a comparison of production that between those two lines. It's a comparison of honestly the other three lines production. Because this top line is a legitimate threat every time they're on the ice together. That's really exciting. It's also a nice safety net to have, right? Like we talked last season at length about how there wasn't that. There was no player or line that when they were out there, you were like, okay, you need a goal right now. Who are you putting on the ice? That did not exist last season. So to be fair, and even in a night when we got shut out, having the opportunities and having the ability to still have a threat line on the ice where they can score at any time is a luxury that is nice to have. You at least even on nights like this when they're on the ice together, you at least think like, okay, well, like look who's on the ice. Maybe that's not a thing that we've had honestly in quite some time. So I can be appreciative of that. I also can be appreciative of the goaltending in this game.
Yes.
James Reimer, man, going into the season, I think at one point we had said that the biggest question mark of this hockey team going into the season was going to be goaltending, and specifically the non-Husso goaltending. And Reimer's been phenomenal this season. He's been a plus asset. He has been someone who, even when Husso needs that night off, and Husso's obviously the 1A here, but when Husso needs a night off and you don't feel like, oh boy, we're just kind of like punting this game, which is kind of what especially the second half of last season really was. So that has been a huge plus for this hockey team early on this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about softies a lot in this, and that one goal he allowed, the one goal that Reimer allowed was, albeit a pretty big softie.
It seems like all of our goals are that. They're like 5-hole, doesn't squeeze tight enough, and it just like slowly slides over the line. Like that feels like every goal we've given up that year has been that exact goal.
That's the Husso special, is the one where it just sneaks through the 5-hole. The one goal he'll let in a game where you're like, but the rest of the game he'll be lights out and his goal saves above expected will be fantastic.
Yeah.
So you like just write it off as like he was fantastic. And he was. I mean, it's funny. He let in one of those goals. We're talking about Reimer primarily, but in Husso in this instance, he let in one of those goals against the Islanders. Just one that just squeaked through against Zizekas, I think. But then was just absolutely lights out the rest of the game, and was the main reason the Wings made that comeback to win, was because he refused to let more goals in that were his fault, that I should say. And in this one against the Panthers, the shot from Lawrence hit his glove, like he came out of his glove, went off the top of the crossbar, then off his back and in, just like a series of misfortunate events. But like outside of that, he was fan-freaking-tastic. Like just absolutely phenomenal stuff from James Reimer today. 25 saves and 26 shots for a .962 save percentage. Scotty, he posted a better goal saved above expected than the goalie that earned the shutout in this one, even with that softie of a goal in air quotes.
Yeah. We talked about the defense, right? I mean, it's hard to get a goal save above expected of really high when you're just facing low danger all night, which is kind of what Bob dealt with.
Well, Bob still had respect. His goal saved above expected was 2.07.
Oh, yeah. So you got a shutout in the NHL. I'm not trying to I love Bob. I've made that very clear. He's one of my favorite goalies in the league. It's a lot of low danger versus, not that the Wings defense was like a catastrophe tonight, but high danger. We saw the heat map earlier. Big difference in those.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of those off to the side of the net were some pretty acrobatic saves by Bobrovsky. Yeah. But James Reimer, even being the goalie that allowed one goal, had a goal saved above expected of 2.27, 0.2 more goals above expected than Sergei Bobrovsky. So even with the softie, they say he saved over 2 more goals than was expected based on the workload he faced in this game. Reimer has been great in the backup role. Husso's been really good in the starter role as well. I mean, funnily enough, like you were saying, the thing we were afraid of being our biggest weakness, and it's right now one of our biggest strengths. And just please, for the love of God, get this offense going, get them some support so they don't have to keep carrying the team on their back, giving us a shot to win.
Better at even strength, please.
Yes. Scotty, I had a lot more I could say. I thought Veleno looked great again. That's all I'll say. I mean, he didn't get any points. Nobody on this team did. They got shut out. But, I mean, he's looking fast. He's looking creative with the puck. I mean, you saw that little comparison they made with Datsuk. Some great stuff with Joe Veleno. But we got to do a little brief preview. I don't know how deep we got to go because we just played the Bruins. Red Wings just played the Bruins last Saturday. They play them at LCA Saturday, 7:00. Bruins still without a regulation loss, I believe, as of right now.
They played Toronto tonight. I don't know the result of that.
They probably beat Toronto. Yep, they beat them in a shootout. So great. Toronto picked up a point as well. I love the Bruins going to overtime against their divisional opponents. Just fantastic stuff by them. But yeah, the Bruins stay without a regulation loss. So
what are they? 8-0-1 or 9-0-1 now?
Something probably more insane than that. Let me double check. That might make them 10-0-1, to be honest. They are 9-0-1. You're right, and they're 4-0-0 on the road. So they don't have their one loss came at home, not even on the road.
Boy, am I glad we lost tonight. Goodness gracious. That's a point we made in yesterday's show, man. Like, this Panthers game was really important because you're running into a juggernaut. So now your back's up against the wall and you got to hand a Bruins team their first regulation loss. I guess it doesn't have to be a regulation loss, but you got to beat a Bruins team who doesn't have a regulation loss so far this season and only has one loss total. So,
but on the flip side, they will be without Charlie McAvoy, who got suspended after a really dumb hit the other night. So he's been suspended 4 games. I think he's served 1. Regardless, he'll be out.
Obviously, go Husso.
I think
he'll be fully rested, so hopefully that'll help.
This would be a crazy game to put Alex Lyon in the net, wouldn't it?
Could you imagine?
And then he shuts him out.
I love it. Let's do it.
But I mean, you guys know the Bruins. What else do we have to say? They're a very good hockey team. This would be a great opportunity for the Red Wings to really get a fire lit under them and play a really good hockey game. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised because after how they played during this stretch and how the Bruins really kind of, I almost want to say embarrassed them, was just how easily they made it look against them in Boston last weekend. This wouldn't surprise me if this was the game where the Red Wings kind of popped back up and was like, okay, we gotta do something here before this gets out of control.
Sure.
With that being said, Bruins don't have a regulation loss, so the chances of that aren't great, but at the same time, it is possible.
Anything's possible.
That's my cope right now, is that the Red Wings are going to play really hard against a really good team because they want to prove something.
How does first goal work when you get shut out? I guess we just both are very obviously wrong.
Yeah.
First goal this one.
I think I said Ghost and you said DeBrincat.
Yeah.
We got to come up with the rules with this.
Yeah, we need a point system.
I don't know who I want to go with for first goal. I'm gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna reward Christian Fischer with a goal.
Nice.
He gets 5 minutes ice time a night. Well, that's not true. He gets penalty.
Like how you're rewarding Christian Fischer with a goal. That's really a crazy sentence.
I'm gonna reward Christian Fischer with a goal.
Brian Fischer is rewarding Christian Fischer with a goal himself. Yes.
I mean, he plays a really good hockey game in the role that he's given, and he's actually had quite a couple of opportunities despite his limited minutes with the Red Wings because of the fact that line plays so hard. So I could see that fourth line, especially with how, Zarnik's been playing so hard as that fourth line center. I kind of love the way he's been bringing it this season so far. I'm going to say Christian Fischer to really, really ignite that depth scoring for the Red Wings as far deep as it can go.
Right, that's true. I'm going to be super boring and do the opposite of you. I'm just going to go Larks, man. I think top line out there early. Maybe try to get on the board in the first period, and the captain is trying to ignite the boys early on, getting a few shots on net, just to get some freaking shots on net because they barely had any in their previous game, and maybe one gets through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to score, though. I'd like to not go 2 consecutive games without scoring a goal. That'd be cool.
I agree. That would be very nice. All right, man. I think that about does it.
Yeah, that's it, man.
That does it. I'm literally guessing with these first goals, just taking complete pot shots.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. I don't want to be boring, though. I like going with the fun guys.
Well,
That's not a shot at you, though. That was not meant to be a shot.
No, it's fine. I'm boring.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
We ball.
Scotty does ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Monday, recapping the game against the Bruins. Let's hope it's a good one for our sake and our sanity.
Let's hope.
Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.